Well, I'm Julie Enslow. I'm actually a former co-chair of the Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice for a few years, and active here locally with Peace Action Wisconsin, and now with 350 Milwaukee, then the climate activist group. I'm very privileged to be able to introduce the recipient of a Lifetime Activist Award, Mr. Art Heitzer. Oh, I think I first spotted Art when he was, probably doesn't know it, but he was here at University of Marquette and working part-time in Rhubarb Bookstore, right? And I used to go to Rhubarb Bookstore to buy radical books and to have meetings with the anti-Vietnam War movement. And I'd spot him in there working in the store, and that's the first time I ever laid eyes on him. But Art actually is probably most well known for his ongoing, amazing commitment to the people of Cuba, to normalizing U.S. relations with our neighbor to the south. His activism started right here at Marquette University back in the 1960s. The son of immigrant working class parents, Art attended Marquette University on a scholarship from the Service Employees International Union, SEIU. He was elected president of the student body at Marquette University during the anti-Vietnam War era. And Art helped lead a movement on campus at that time against institutional racism, which resulted in creation here at Marquette University of the Educational Opportunity Program in 1968, which became a national model for recruiting and retaining students of color. U.S. Representative Gwen Moore was in this Educational Opportunity Program's first class, recruited from North Division High School. Thank you, Art. That got her going. Art graduated with honors from Marquette University and also from the University of Wisconsin Law School. He practiced civil rights and employment law in Milwaukee since 1975, where he was named among the best lawyers, as well as having been listed in Who's Who in American College Students, Who's Who in lawyers, just a second, in the American law, and Who's Who among super lawyers. He has received many awards, including Civil Libertarian of the Year in 2007 from the ACLU of Wisconsin, following his wrongful arrest as a legal observer at a demonstration against the invasion of Iraq. I think it was about 10 feet away from him when that arrest happened. Art Heitzer is currently active in the peace and anti-war movement, including the Milwaukee End the Wars Coalition, Peace Action Wisconsin, the National Lawyers Guild, and leader of the Wisconsin Coalition to Normalize Relations with Cuba. He's an associate member of Veterans for Peace in Milwaukee, having represented harassed Black Vietnam veterans who entered Milwaukee's industrial workforce back in the 1970s. And as if that's not enough, Art also is president of the Milwaukee Turners, arguably the oldest civic organization in the city, and has helped transform it from a largely German-American club based on the motto, a sound mind in a sound body, into a thriving multi-ethnic organization against intolerance and exploitation in the heart of the city with over 500 members. But it is Cuba that holds a central place in his life and his heart as an activist. Art has been to Cuba numerous times, including working in construction as part of the 5th Vicero's Brigade in 1972, and in many sister cities, and professional research trips. In 2000, He helped bring 200 National Lawyer Guild members and their families to the 15th Congress of International Association of Democratic Lawyers in Havana. Art played a leading role in support of the Cuban 5 prisoners who were in US prisons for years after attempting to deter the ongoing terrorism being organized in Florida against Cuba. He has spoken and written widely on this case, including a prominent letter published by the New York Times shortly before the White House finally ordered their release from prison. Working with the Center for Constitutional Rights, Art helped train and establish a network of over 50 lawyers to assist travelers to Cuba. He participated in the defense of all of the trials for travel, approximately 12 administrative prosecutions of US people under the administration of George W. Bush, and as well as directly representing dozens of Cuba travelers. This included the Methodist Three from Milwaukee, from the representatives of the Methodist Church just up the street a ways here, and Central United Methodist, right? Yes. He also represented Cuban American Albert Fox, the only individual prosecuted since 2006 for traveling to Cuba. And this was under President Obama's administration. In the last 25 years, Art has counseled over 1,000 US Cuba travelers, usually pro bono. Art Heitzer lives with his wife, Sandra Edlund, and here in Milwaukee, and they frequently travel to Germany to visit their son and his family. And that's in Berlin, Germany. And as those who know him can attest, he is never, ever seen in public without distributing flyers for the next event. At 75, he is unstoppable. Thank you, Art, for all you have done and all you continue to do. To quote your current personal motto, lifting each other up is the best form of exercise. So I'm really proud to lift you up today so that you will be presented with the WNPJ Lifetime Activist Award.
Art, you are well known as an outstanding employment and labor attorney, but your additional work with the National Lawyers Guild, ACLU, Milwaukee Turners, immigrant groups, and a myriad of community and worldwide peace and justice groups shows your outstanding contribution to our community. When you see injustice, you use all your tools to achieve change, whether through direct action, assisting groups to best steps in demonstrations, defending travel to Cuba, recognizing an unsung heroine, or gathering groups together to seek community rehabilitation to replace mass incarceration. Your leadership as president of the Milwaukee Turners has helped it to move further from a population of mostly German immigrants to a most welcoming, multi-ethnic place in largely segregated Milwaukee. When I asked you, Art, if there was an animal or plant that you admire or feel a connection with, you were quick to tell me that you especially appreciate the owl. The owl is a bird that many traditions find wise, intelligent, and forward-leaning. In fact, the owl is a symbol taken by Milwaukee Turners with their theme of sound minds in sound bodies. This wonderful owl photo was taken by my sister, Roseanne Baumilius, of a great horned owl who hung out near her Oshkosh home. It is a great photo because owls are seldom seen in daylight. The great horned is one of the largest owls, can be 2 feet tall, and it is the most common owl in Wisconsin. Owls are nocturnal and they see objects at night many times better than we humans. Owls see what most of us do not see. For this, they are often called wise and free thinkers. Art, you are an example of seeing what is truth and what needs to be heard. Also, like an owl, not backing off from a wolf who attacks it, you do not back off, despite difficult obstacles in the way. You have been arrested, you have been ridiculed, but you hold true to your convictions, despite harassment from naysayers. And you achieve change by working well with other organizations. We thank you for your lifetime of achieving peace and justice. And most of all, we thank you for bringing people together to achieve such peace and justice. Thank you so much. An award you'll take home with you, and with the words that I've just spoken printed out in the back.
Thank you so much to the nominators, George Martin, who's dealing with very serious health issues, couldn't be here today, and Julian Slow in particular. I'm honored to be on the same program with Angela Harris and Claude Motley. Thank you so much, Mary Kay and Tanetta, and everyone who's involved in Wisconsin Network for Peace and Justice. I have just a few thoughts because the introductions have been substantial, I guess I put it. So reflecting on some 55 years of some modest attempts to challenge racism in our community, I'm left with two overriding thoughts. One is that as we fight and establish some victories in some areas, such as 55 years ago at Marquette, where the African-American presence was basically limited to varsity athletes, and changing that so it's now a somewhat diverse student body and has some faculty of color as well. But seeing at the same time what has happened to most African-American youth and others in this community, where access to remunerative income and jobs and stability and housing has gone, I think, way down. My major conclusion is that the underlying cause of all this division, divisiveness, distrust, individualism is capitalism. And even though we can push and make some big victory, 3 years later, look, we've got a different kind of student body. We have EOP, we have other programs. We turn around and around us and behind us, we see how far the living conditions of most people of color have gone way down. And so I have no magic answer for how to challenge or overturn capitalism, but I do ask you to reflect as to why these conditions may be being forced backward in one section, one area, then crop up and take over in another area. The other thought that I have, and this goes back to my days at Marquette, in terms of defeating racism, besides the important need in advance for people of color to recognize their tradition, their pride, their outstanding abilities, etc., is the need for white people to understand, everybody, but especially white people to understand that it is in their self-interest to defeat racism and to live in a non-racist society. This is not a project of charity. Let me be good to you and then go on with my life when things are difficult or I have other challenges. There may be a small percentage of white people who will be activated to do something out of whatever we'll call it, charity or consciousness. But to get large numbers of people of white backgrounds to challenge consistently racism in one season and out of season, they have to understand it's in their self-interest. And this is the message of Martin Luther King when he was put in the Birmingham jail. He asked his white jailer, how much do you get? How much you paid? You should be on our side. When Obama in Park in Chicago gave his farewell address, what did he highlight? The fact that the small percentage, the 1%, manipulate people of color, African Americans versus other people of color and white people, and they end up with all the power. And meanwhile, we fight each other. So unless those lessons are understood more broadly, I don't think we are going to get too far in building a lasting movement to defeat racism, or at least to help overcome it in large part. Let me say a word or two about our media, which of course contributes to this, what I've just talked about in terms of fear and distrust, individualism. But I'll just give you an example or two. My work related to trying to normalize relations with Cuba has been mentioned. So you've probably seen as activists, people concerned about peace, that the United States was able to get a majority of the world's nations to vote against Russia and their actions in Ukraine. But how many of you have seen that on November 3rd, 10 days ago, I think, the United Nations General Assembly voted 99% to condemn, for 30 years in a row, to condemn the 62-year-old policy of economic blockade against Cuba. The vote was 185 nations. Said enough already, stop this, as they have for 30 years in a row. Two countries, US under Biden. By the way, under Obama, we abstained, but under Trump and under Biden, we're still fighting this. And then one country that always does whatever the US says in the UN, and that's Israel. Two countries against 185. How many of you saw that in the media? Okay, got a few more hands than I thought. I heard nothing on, let alone corporate media, NPR, the PBS Nightly Report, so not a word. So by and large, the American people don't know this. As a matter of fact, just chatting with people here, the fact that the US lists Cuba, the victim of US terrorism for years, as a perpetrator, a state supporter of terrorism, causing tremendous problems with Cuban trade, preventing people from Europe from traveling to Cuba. People said, I didn't know about this. I didn't know about this. So that's one example. We can think of many. We can look at the Ukraine war situation, the background for that, which many of us have different perspectives based on what we have heard or not heard has led up to that war. So finally, I'm going to end with a quote from former President Dwight Eisenhower. So when I was here at Marquette, the most liberal member of the political science faculty was busy telling everybody who was aware of it, there is no such thing as a military-industrial complex. It's just a myth, despite the fact that Eisenhower, in his farewell address, had warned the country to beware of the dominance of the military-industrial complex. And just as we see $60 billion and another package of $1 billion sent for more arms to Ukraine, in the view of many of us, to prolong that war rather than to fight and to allow Ukraine and the US and Russia to negotiate a way out of that senseless and terrible war. Just reflect on this. As Eisenhower said, every gun that is made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signified in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed. Think of the Milwaukee community. Think of the desperate situation so many people are in. And think of all the emergency off-budget payments that can be sent to fight a war far away. Thank you so much.